Grateful, Mr Deputy Speaker, to you for allowing me to participate in this debate on the increase in the employers' pension contributions that is expected of the police. What I want to do in particular is to reference the situation in London, and if the House will forgive me to be largely parochial in my comments. The context, though, for my comments, though, is the situation that faces London in terms of the potential demand for £130 million to be found to meet the gap as a result of the way the government has decided to require employer pension contributions to be calculated. As I said in an intervention on my honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has identified that this potentially will cost the Metropolitan Police £130 million, equivalent to some 2,000 police officer positions. Now, that is in the context, as my honourable friend for Ilford quite rightly set out, of some 3,000 police officers having already been lost from London since 2010. Now, in my borough, the London Borough of Harrow, we have seen just shy of 200 police officer positions lost since 2010. And my honourable friend, the member for Birmingham Erdington, effectively laid out a challenge to the Minister for Police to come to the estates of his community and to hear the concerns about rising crime. Well, I know that the Minister for Police has already been to many of the estates and the roads in my constituency and probably already heard many of the concerns, because every general election the Minister is to be found knocking on doors in Harrow West, ostensibly campaigning for the Conservative opponent to the sitting Labour and Cooperative member for Harrow West, but perhaps quietly canvassing for me. I do not know. But what I do know is he is assiduous in helping ostensibly trying to help every Conservative candidate, and he will have consistently heard the concerns as a result about policing in Harrow. He will know, for example, of the rise in violent crime, noticeable in particular over the last 12 months, in Rayners Lane and the Grange Farmer Estate, where we have seen guns being used in incidents of violent crime, an unprecedented situation in my time living in the borough. Many of my constituents too are well aware of the prevalence of drugs being consumed and traded in South Harrow and along the Northolt Road. They're aware of it in the Harrow part of the racecourse estate. They are concerned about incidents of antisocial behaviour, particularly aggressive drinking, in Wealdstone and in South Harrow, and they ask where the police are in terms of dealing with that. And of course, what has happened in recent years has been the slow reduction in police numbers. And the concern, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that if the Minister for Police and his boss, the Home Secretary, fail again to persuade the Chancellor of the Exchequer in advance of the police grant report to make good the £400-odd million nationally that is required to stop further cuts in policing as a result of this increase in police employer contributions, then the concern is that there will be further cuts to policing in Harrow. And that is profoundly worrying, not least because as a result of the merger that Sadiq Khan has had to make happen of police borough command units, Harrow, a still comparatively low crime borough in comparison to its neighbours of Barnet and Brent, have all been merged together. And we face the very real prospect of those police officers that are assigned to the three boroughs increasingly being used to fight crime in Barnet and in Brent. More police being diverted out of Harrow for that purpose. Now, the concerns of my constituents have been exacerbated, Mr Deputy Speaker, by the fact that the response teams for this new borough command unit will no longer be based at Harrow Police Station. They'll be based in the police station of Colindale and the police station in Wembley, increasing inevitably the response time to get to violent incidents in Harrow. And bearing in mind that the custody suite at Harrow Police Station has been earmarked for closure for some time, inevitably those arrested in Harrow again will be taken to Colindale primarily, but also potentially to Wembley, increasing the amount of time that police officers are out of our borough and unavailable for responding to crime. Now, I, like many other members of the House, I suspect, over the summer took time out to spend time on patrol with the police. And what was striking for me was just how thin the thin blue line is in Harrow. Officers that are required to be part of response teams, also having to deal with ongoing police matters, but because of the smallness of the response teams, it is taking longer and longer to gather evidence, to deal with incidents of crime. And inevitably, and not surprisingly, the numbers of people being taken to court and being convicted for crimes that have been committed are substantially down. If the money cannot be found to make good this increase in the shortfall in employers' pension contributions, inevitably that situation is going to get worse. Now, I am, as I said, struck by the rise in gang tensions in Outer London. When I was first elected as a Member of Parliament, gang tensions, to the extent that they existed, were a feature of Inner London. Now they have become very much a feature of outer London. And whilst there are many good initiatives, and I take at this point the opportunity, if I may, Mr Deputy Speaker, to praise impartially the Ignite Trust, a superb charity that operates in my constituency, for their efforts to resolve some of the gang tensions that exist between a gang based in my constituency apparently and a gang based in the neighbouring borough of Ealing. Despite their work, without the support of a more visible police presence, I suspect we're going to be continuing to face difficulties in terms of the rise in gang crime. Now, other honourable members who've had the opportunity to speak already have raised the significant impact of the loss of police numbers for neighbourhood policing. I can remember when the last Labour government introduced neighbourhood policing and what a difference it made in the South Harrow part of my constituency. A high school that had seen unsavoury characters collecting outside the school gates at the end of every month was able to see police from the ward-based neighbourhood policing team able to be deployed for half an hour outside school gates, and instantly those unsavoury characters were disappeared off. They could be pursued when they did show their face on occasion again. So that was a very immediate and very effective response that those neighbourhood police were able to give. But the visibility of those PCSOs and police officers substantially reduced the fear of crime in my constituency, and I know across London as well. And I have to say, Mr Deputy Speaker, it is profoundly concerning that the government has not grasped the scale of the fear of crime, not only in Inner London, but also in Outer London. I give way to the Honourable.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for giving way. He talks about the effectiveness of neighbourhood policing and PCSOs, but would he also go on to say that they are the eyes and ears? The reason that we're seeing rising crime rate under this Tory government is neighbourhood policing has been removed because they gather intelligence for all of the police service.
Fred is absolutely right. Whether it is in the north of England or in our great capital city, it has been a false choice to allow funding cuts to the police that have led to the reduction in neighbourhood policing. And not surprisingly, there has been a reduction in the number of people getting convicted for committing crime as a result. There aren't the police to get the access to the intelligence that is needed to find those guilty of the offences, or indeed the police officers that then process them through the courts. So I hope it won't be long before the Minister comes to Harrow West again. I hope that I would be willing to take him on a tour of the hotspots of crime in Harrow to help him better understand his responsibilities, not just to my constituents and the constituents of London, but also to the people of this great country, who deserve far better than they are getting from this government in terms of funding for crime. So I end, Mr Deputy Speaker, by paying tribute to my right honourable friend, the member for Wolverhampton, for securing this debate. And I hope that the conclusion of this debate, if not today, but perhaps at the police grant report or perhaps at Prime Minister's questions next week, is to hear an announcement that there will not be a requirement on police forces to find this extra contribution to pension funds, and that we will not see the substantial reduction in police numbers that many of us will fear happen if the government goes ahead with this.